But anyway, I had a fairly normal childhood, I guess. We didn't have any money. It was during the Depression. My father, who was a great guy, but he had trouble getting a job. And so he was unemployed most of the time. My earliest memories are just him sitting home reading the want ads in the newspaper time and again. He had been a dress cutter, and there were just no jobs, apparently, for dress cutters. So we lived, after a while we moved to, I think, the Bronx in New York. While I was working for Marvel, the first 20 years or so I was just doing regular comics. Then, after a while, I really wanted to quit because I felt, while Martin Goodman was a great guy and a good publisher, I didn't like really what he wanted me to do. He felt comics were just for young kids or stupid adults. And he used to say to me, "Remember, Stan, don't use words of more than 2 syllables, don't have too much dialogue, get a lot of action, don't worry about characterization." And that was fine. I was doing it, and the books were doing well, and I had a steady job, but it wasn't satisfying. Because I really think of myself as a reasonably good writer. I like to write. So I really wanted to quit and try something else. And I remember Joan said to me, "You know, Stan, if you want to quit, before you do, why don't you do one book the way you would like to do it? The worst that happens is Martin will fire you, and so what? You want to quit anyway." So coincidentally, at that time, he had found out that our competitor, DC Comics, which called itself National Comics in those days, they had done a book called The Justice League of America, a group of superheroes, and it was selling very well. And he said to me, "Stan, why don't you do a book about a group of superheroes?" So I figured this is my chance to do it my way. So I came up with something I called the Fantastic Four, about 4 superheroes. But instead of make them real characters living in the real world.
It's a true story, although sometimes it's hard even for me to believe it. But we had already done the Fantastic Four, and I think maybe the X-Men. I can't remember the order, but my publisher came to me and he said, "Stan, I want you to come up with another superhero." So I said, okay, and I went home, and when my publisher said do something, I'd better do it because I wanted to keep my job. I thought, what can I come up with now? And the most important thing in a superhero at first is the superpower. Once you get that, everything else comes along. So I thought, what power will I give a new guy? And I saw a fly crawling on the wall. And I said, hey, if I could get a superhero that could stick to walls and crawl on them. So I thought that was good. Now I needed a name. So I said, well, let's see, Fly Man, Mosquito Man. I got down to Spider-Man. Spider-Man. It just sounded dramatic. So, okay, I had my hero, I had his power, his name, and then I figured just for fun, I'm going to give him personal problems. Because except for you people who are that your lives are perfect, but most other people have personal problems. And then I thought I'd make him a teenager, because there were no teenage superheroes that I knew of at the time. So armed with all that wonderful material, those great ideas, I ran into my publisher's office and I told him. This was my reaction, the reaction he gave me. Stan, that is the worst idea I have ever heard. First of all, and he started to give me his, because he's a very logical man, very intellectual. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. And you want him to have personal problems? Stan, don't you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems. Well, I left the office disappointed, but obviously a much wiser man. And I couldn't get Spider-Man out of my system. So we were about to kill a magazine. I think it was called Amazing Fantasy. It wasn't selling well, and We were sending the last issue to press. When you do the last issue of a magazine, nobody cares what you put in it because the book is dying. Just to get it out of my system, I put Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy, featured him on the cover, forgot about it. A month later, all the sales figures came in. My publisher came racing into my office. Stan, you remember that character we both loved so much, Spider-Man? He said, let's do him as a series. Now, why am I telling you this? Besides the fact that I have to kill a little time. If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it.